Put in the passcode.
All right, so far so good. Now, the other problem we're still going to have is I believe they still haven't hooked me up other than right here. So we may end up having to, let me see, come in and come out again. But can you guys all see my screen right now with a whole bunch of other things on it?
Now that is progress. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
Good
getting
job.
there. All right. Now let me see here. I want to do this. Okay, so how do I get it to shrink a little bit over here? Okay, I got to do that. Okay, I got that here. All right, because I still want to see some of the stuff. Okay. All right, well, I'll just have to go with that for now. Okay, I got the stuff on the other side. I'll just go with it, I think. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay, there we go. That'll work. Okay. So I think I got that part. All right. Now going from there, I also went ahead and went over all the other questions and stuff. So right now we've got 4 people hooked up. So either they're going, I don't know how to get there. Yep, there's 5.
Just make sure I'm marked as present. And are we going to get the other points for the very first Zoom class? Because those points aren't out there yet.
Yeah, I haven't put those in there yet. Because if you noticed, I didn't put the last one in as an assignment. I put it in just as the Zoom. So I'll be getting there as I get there. Okay, somebody say something again.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
All right.
This is Stephanie.
I had my speaker down too much. But yeah, the points will start popping up there. So don't worry about that part. And while we're waiting for folks, this is what I was just working on. And let me finish this up here real quick. Because going through all this stuff, I've been finding out that there's a few things that I probably should be doing a little better, and that's what we're going to work on. All right. Okay, and let me do this one more time. All right, we're getting there. We got a few more now showing up. Okay.
Yeah, it's asking for a code.
Again?
Yes.
All
You
right.
gave us the code. It's 977-376.
Yep.
Yeah, I just got that though, but it's asking for that.
Okay, well, that's why I sent it out anyway, just in case. So we'll wait for a few others to go ahead and catch up with us then, because that might be it there. They didn't see that. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, that was kind of weird. Okay, let me see. Okay, whoop, we just dropped out a few bunch of people. Now we're only back down to 6. Okay. All right, now we're back. Okay. And let me see. I should have the recording going. Yep, I see it. So we're recording it. All right. So while we're waiting for everybody to show up, I'm going to go ahead and speak. I'll be sending this to you guys here shortly. All right. Well, basically right after the meeting. Okay. One of the big things I'm getting is you need to answer the entire question. Now in the DS quiz, I know there's at least one person, she did section 1, 2, 3, and then after the third section, she went ahead and added a added like the 3A and 3B. Okay, I didn't go down and look for it because I was already in at section 3 and those questions belong to section 2. So I need to go back and take a look at that. So I will do that, but make sure that you fill it out with each of the sections because I've got a lot of these that I'm going through. And if you notice by all my comments, I take my time going through each one. So the easier you can make it for me is the more I can go ahead and use my time too. So number one, the thing is answer the question that's actually asked. Number two, written communication. I think everybody's making too much out of making a bullet and making it harder than it actually is. All a bullet is a sentence without grammar. Now spelling still counts. Notice I did say spelling and grammar. But you don't have to put in all the nice little itty bitty words and that kind of stuff. But you do need to put in enough words for your reader, me in this case, to understand what you're trying to say. That's why if your bullet isn't between 8 to 10 words, take a good look at it and say, okay, is this person going to be able to understand it? Just like a sentence. Is this person going to be able to understand this sentence? Now, remember, a sentence is supposed to communicate one point at a time. That's why we only have one noun. It's the same for a bullet. You get right to what you want to do. And it efficiently uses your time because you don't have to worry about big, huge sentences, but you get it down just to the point, and it doesn't waste my time because I can see whether A, you know it, or B, you don't. If you don't know it, and you'll know this because it's really hard to write that bullet, look at the study sheets, textbooks, or email me and say, hey, I'm having a problem here. Of course, my first thing is going to be, how do you have it on your study sheet? Did you find it in the textbook? Or I might say, hey, go to this study sheet and look at it. So if you haven't done the study sheets, and I know most of the people here, I'm talking to the choir, not specific individuals. But that'll be the first question I'll ask is it on your study sheet? All right. Also, writing in bullets gets rid of all the extra words. Now, some of you are still writing me in sentences. And I think one of you, I mentioned you had actually 5 points in one sentence. Right. That totally confuses the reader. And what it does is it goes ahead and makes me believe you don't know what you're talking about. Because you've got 5 different answers in that one sentence. So basically, it gets rid of the BS. It lets me know if you know it, and it also lets you know if you don't know it. So that's kind of the key that we're looking here. So just write it as a sentence if you have to, but if that sentence is more than 15 words, it's really way too long. Writing as a bullet, you get rid of all of the you don't have to worry about grammar. Okay. Spelling, yes, but you don't have to worry about grammar. All right, the study sheets. And again, remember, I'm talking mostly to the choir here. I don't think they're either not being used correctly or not being filled out when the videos are used. All right, and the key part is read the chapter first, view all of the videos, don't skim or not do it at all, and fill in the study sheets when you do the videos. Any words that you need, or excuse me, add words if you need to be able to make sure you understand what the study sheet is saying above the word or phrase that you may have added. Remember, the whole idea of the study sheets is when you go to the quiz and when you go to the paper, you'll be able to answer the questions and be able to use, you know, some economic language. All right. Now, I'm not asking you to go ahead and every third word has to be something from the glossary or anything like that. No, just the key words, tricky phrases. That's it. And remember, if there are any blanks on a study sheet, go back to the textbook to fill it in. Now, as far as graphs, you can build one. And some of you that put the graph on there, I went ahead and actually just put in 2 curves and an arrow showing where the curve went on top of your graph, because you didn't actually graph it out right. And all I did is I just went to insert, yeah, what the heck was it? Shapes. Oh, that's what I forgot. Insert shapes and then into tools. And or I should say, and selected the tool that I wanted.
Mr. Bugsby.
Yep.
This Carlise, can you please tell me what you're speaking on? Please, what we're talking about.
Okay, well, I started about 5 minutes after class started. So what I'm going to do is, for everybody that's here, I'm going to finish this up. For everybody that's not, you can do one of 2 things. I'm going to email this out as an attachment. I'm also going to put it on the homepage. And in the email and on the homepage, I'll be explaining some of this stuff. And it's basically, this is what I'm seeing that's wrong with the exams and the papers. So some of you that are getting poor grades on the exam and getting poor grades on the papers, these are the key things I'm looking at. All right, so you can build it using that, or you can draw the graph, take a picture of it, and submit it with your assignment. You know, you've got, as you go to the assignments, you know, you get the 3A and you go see other attachment or whatever. Or you can just describe it in writing, such as on 3A, the key part was shifting the curve to the right. Now, why did we shift it to curve to the right? That would be a couple of extra bullets on there, but that would be your answer bullet. That would be bullet number 1, shift the curve to the right. And now, while some of you did talk about it, I think there was 1 or 2 that you did actually say shift the curve to the right, but you did it in the, what I want to call it, the bullets 2, 3, or 4. And I highlighted it, or didn't highlight it, but I put a comment on it and said, hey, this is your answer. So that's what you need to do. You can do one of those 3 things to do that. If you don't want to go ahead and spend the time making the graph, just draw it on a piece of paper, take a picture of it with your phone, and just submit it that way. So anyway, this is the one thing that you'll be getting after class today. And like I said, it'll be on the homepage, and I'll also be sending it to you guys with this as a as an attachment. All right, so that part out of the way, let's go ahead and tackle some of the questions that you guys were sending me. And this is the questions that came off the GR module, or the government module. Remember, the thing that we are in right now, we have a republic. In other words, indirect rule of the citizens. So in other words, we're ruling ourselves, but we do it through representatives, through the rule of law, and then the key part, limited government. We don't do any of the rest of these things, or at least we're not supposed to. This takes us back kind of to this study sheet that we did back in the market systems chapter. This is the one talking about the economic systems, going from capitalism to socialism, and telling us how we define what is capitalism, what is socialism. It has to do with ownership, and also who coordinates, or in other words, who answers these 5 questions, the market or a planning committee. But knowing that they're all mixed, right? We don't have a pure socialist economic system. We don't have a pure capitalist economic system. Right now, we do have Singapore as probably the most capitalist system. And we have North Korea as the most socialist economic system. And notice it goes from 1 to, well, 178 now. A couple of years ago, it went to 180, but we lost a few countries in there. And what it does is it takes you along. It's kind of like that scale I talked about. The most capitalist is over here. The most socialist is over here. And we now pop up at number 20. A couple of years ago, we were at number 18. Why? Because we have the government doing more and more stuff, ownership of stuff, and coordinating what happens inside of our economy. Now, part of that was brought on by changes that our political leaders thought they had to make so we wouldn't all die to COVID. Right? You know, obviously something we don't want to do. And everybody, there was a lot of fear going on. And so we let the government do its thing. And they actually now have a final report out. And I'm trying to get a copy of that, which basically said, not necessarily doing it, well, let me see. Let's just put it this way. To minimize the deaths to COVID and the deaths to everything else, such as suicide and several other things, Florida did it right. Okay, we recovered faster than any other state. We had we weren't using just the vaccines. We were also using treatments that if you got it, you could go ahead and get out and get over it really quick. If you remember, this is the same thing that when President Trump announced, hey, I got it. And then within 8 days, he was back in the White House, back to work because of the, I guess what they call it, something like the cocktail of drugs they put in there to go ahead and fight the coronavirus. So that's kind of the way it went. So it's not that we went from 18 to 20 because of problems, but we went from 18 to 20 because we didn't know how things were working. And unfortunately, there's some things in government and some states that are still hanging on to the old way we do things. New York is dead last out of the 50 states on how they handled coronavirus. But remember, we're Monday morning quarterbacking. We didn't know how to do it. So everybody was looking at it from a different point of view. And remember back in chapter 1, we talked about information. Well, everybody was using some set of numbers. Some people were using some people were using the other. And what it came down to is, lucky for us, the Florida government got it right. The New York government, which it looked like it was getting it right, at least it did in the press, ended up, after reviewing all of the data and everything else and looking at everything, not just COVID deaths and not just deaths itself, but if you just look at deaths in particular, there were more deaths, or let's put it this way, the increase of deaths was higher than it should have been with COVID or through the COVID season. And that amount of deaths actually started in some cases were higher than the COVID deaths in those particular areas. So we had more, and in some cases were even higher than the COVID deaths. So, again, this is all Monday morning quarterbacking. We didn't know it then, so the government got involved because we had fear, we had panic, we wanted to go ahead and somebody had to take charge and government did. Now the problem is getting government to release some of that, because remember, the sixth characteristic of capitalism was limited government. So getting into the government section, this is a good place to start. Because if you remember, we talked about government getting involved and we had price ceilings and price floors, right? This was also a question in there. If I recall right, I think this was in the DS quiz, all right? Price ceilings cause continual shortages, which means the shortage never goes away. So we always have higher prices than we should have because they don't let the invisible hand bring the market to equilibrium. Also, price floors give us a continual surplus. So we're continuing to produce too much stuff. So a price floor isn't efficient, nor is a price ceiling. At the time, it might seem like the best thing to do, but over the long term, it turns into continual shortages or continual surpluses. So a lot of times when government starts messing with the price, in the short term, everybody thinks, oh, that's a great idea. I think one of the papers that I read, something about prices of drugs, okay, and they're so high. And I guess nobody seems to think back of the whole process because of the cost of making that first pill could be in the millions or billions of dollars. The second pill and everyone after that might be even parts of a penny, depending on how much they make. But it's going to be pennies on the dollar but the first pill was millions or billions of dollars. Why? Research and development. All right. We talk about that in the next chapter, or excuse me, the next module. So there's a lot of research and development costs. Businesses have to spend money to see about doing that. And also we have regulations, right? And some of you said, well, isn't taking regulations away a safety problem? The answer is maybe. All right, let's take the testing period for drugs. If we did the same testing period for the COVID vaccine that we did for just a regular drug, we wouldn't have the COVID vaccine for another 2 or 3 years. But because they went ahead and they didn't get rid of, but what they did is under an emergency use only vaccine, they decided they could go ahead and allow the COVID drugs to skip a lot of the red tape that the government had put in there, or in other words, government regulations, but they kept the inspections and some of the other regulations that they thought were the safety thing. In other words, they took a look at the whole program and they said, for an emergency use only, remember, we didn't want the country to die, because remember, at that point, we were talking about millions of people dying. Now, yep, one death is not good, and somewhere between 600,000 to 800,000 people have died either because of COVID or had COVID in their system when they died of something else. But because of the way that we reported deaths, we don't know if it was because of COVID or with COVID. One of my favorite stories on that is there was a mortician in Arizona. She just found out that the 3 patients she had on her tables were classified as died of COVID. Well, then she looked at the bullet hole in somebody's head, the 4 or 5 bullet holes in somebody's chest, and you kind of get the picture here. All right, the cause of death was the bullets, but they happen to have COVID in their system, so they listed it as a COVID death. Now, why would they do that? Because they get extra money from Uncle Sam to take care of COVID-related cases. Why? Because they don't want COVID to spread. So there's a lot of money that's involved in putting all that together. But that's the kind of thing we were going through. So we got to watch out really carefully when we start thinking about price ceilings and price floors because of the continual shortage of surplus. And we need to take a look at regulations, which we'll get back to in a little bit. Remember the invisible hand, okay? And the key part is it efficiently gives the consumers what they want. And it efficiently allows society's resources to use that. Because remember, the whole point here is we got limited resources and unlimited wants. So how do we bring the two together? Especially when households want to keep as much money as they can from their wallet, but businesses want to take as much as they can. Well, the interesting thing is the invisible hand does this also. Because of competition, which remember is the fourth component of capitalism, it actually looks at individuals or consumers, households, and firms, the businesses, and unintentionally but efficiently promotes the interest of all. So in other words, businesses won't be making as much profit, but households won't be spending the least amount as possible. So what it does is even though both of these groups are attempting to pursue their own interests, the invisible hand equals that out. That's that rationing function that does all of this stuff here. The rationing function with competition. We have those things there, meaning we have the invisible hand, not a lot of government interference, but on the other side, we don't have monopolies. Now, who can stop a monopoly? The government. All right, Federal Trade Commission does this. All right, so this is what we're looking at. Remember, we talked about the government. They're there to do one thing economically, and that's to protect and pursue the other 5 characteristics of capitalism. Most importantly, the invisible hand working. Okay. There was also some comments on public choice theory and something like that. All right. Remember, why do we need to know this? Well, here's that the start. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men, yeah, people. Okay. Yes, that was my addition to it. Created equal, endowed with the creators, so forth and so forth. Unalienable rights, which means the government can't take them away. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, it doesn't say we're always going to be happy, just that we should be able to pursue it. So to create that economic environment, we have a government. Now, public choice theory is nothing but an economic analysis of government decision-making. Our next module, which by the way, is only 1 chapter in the textbook, and it's only 3 videos. So that's it. But we're going to be looking at how they make their decisions. Now, part of it does have to do with politics. Once you're in office, you got one party that controls some things. You got the other party that controls other things. But then you have elections if you don't like how things work out. So we can always change the folks that we put in here if we think their decision-making is bad, or at least that's the way we should. It shouldn't be based on personality. It should be based on results, because we don't want to get these results. All right, so let's take a look at this public choice theory. Now, remember, we are supposed to be fixing market failures. Okay. All right. Now, like I told the people that were here earlier, IT still has not fixed my screen here. So we may be, we will be leaving in about 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go someplace else. So what I hope to do is be able to finish up the government section, and then we'll come back and do the measuring domestic production. So how they do that is they have to create the environment, right? And here's 87 through 90 if you're curious about it. government needs to do is creating this environment that we can prosper. They need to be able to finance the government so they can do their job. They need to intervene in the business sector so that this thing mitigating asymmetric information. Remember, this is where one side may have more information than the other side does. And while the government can mitigate it, it's never going to get rid of it. All right. Because everybody's going to be learning new things differently, and some people forget and everything else. So they work on it. And if a business is not transparent and does something wrong, yeah, there are rules that the executive branch has applied that can be taken to court. There's also laws that the legislative branch has passed that businesses can be taken to court over. So that's what we're looking at to do that. So they do intervene, but they also intervene in the household sector. They make sure that we're not trying to get something for nothing. And then in the foreign sector, that'll be in our last chapter. We're going to be talking about international trade. But what happens if one country cheats on a trade contract? Because they're not in our legal system, so we can't take them to jail. Or we can't take them to court. Right? And there's not a whole lot we actually can do as far as legal things to that other country. And we'll get more into that when we get into that chapter. Now, remember, I had a couple of questions that started to talk about, well, what about this thing of how does the government work? Well, remember, it's Congress, the House and the Senate, they pass the laws. The president enforces the laws. The Supreme Court decides if they're constitutional. All right, that Federal Reserve, they're also nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But once they're there, they cannot be, the president and Congress aren't supposed to be able to intimidate them to do something. Now, that's in a perfect world. Now, the Congress, once it passes a law, the president, and here's where we get into this thing of rules and regulations and stuff. The president has to give his cabinet guidance on how to enforce this law that Congress passed. So each of the separate secretaries, Secretary of Labor, Commerce, Defense, all of these folks, they have to tell everybody under them how to make this happen. And they do that through regulations, right? They put up a regulation, they establish a rule, and then further down that executive chain, other people make other rules that follow these regulations so that everybody from the president all the way down to the new hire knows exactly what their job is to enforce the laws, right? These things here passed by Congress. So that's where the rules and regulations come in, right? Now think about, and some of us may have to think way back, or think about what you're doing to your kids, all the rules that we make up that they have to follow. Now, when we were growing up, we probably thought those rules are absolutely horrible. We know best. And our parents, and those of us that are parents now, go, well, wait a minute, we lived through that. We know the reason for these rules, and they actually do work. But be that as it may, it's the same kind of thing, all right? The rules are going down. This is how things work. Can we have too many of them? You betcha. Can we have too little of them? Also, you betcha. The question is where do we get it in there so that, let me see here, so that this part down here actually happens and that government is providing us that environment and doing all these things to make sure that those other 5 characteristics of capitalism come into play. Now, there was a question on this majority voting thing, right? And if you take a look at, let me see, where is it? Yeah, shoot, I didn't put the page numbers on this one. Where's the majority voting thing at? Oh, yeah. All right, sticky number 6. Where the heck is that? Okay, it's over on page 102 and 103. Okay, so go ahead and open your book up to 102 and 103. And on 102, you see where we can have efficient voting where something shouldn't have been rejected. We also have something inefficient, that something that was accepted shouldn't have been. And that's what they're talking about. If you look at the first one, the one with the green column going way up, the numbers on the top tell you the benefit that happens to society. That red line tells you how much each one of those 3 are being taxed. So, you know, you just go back into the benefit would be 700 plus 250 plus 200, which means society, not an individual, but society would benefit $1,150 from this thing, whatever they're voting for. However, all 3 of them together are only going to be taxed $300 a piece, or $900. So society actually benefits $250 more. Now, they're talking about 3 people here. We may be talking about 100, let me see, what was it? Somewhere around 160 million people that voted last election. So that 160 million, 100 million of them might have thought it wasn't a good idea to do one thing, and 60 million might have thought it was a good idea to do that one thing, and it got voted down. That would be an example that this one is showing. Now, the thing about that is, all right, we got 2 minutes left. The thing about that part is the benefit for society would have been better. And I don't have the numbers for that, but that's what that example is showing you. Society overall would benefit it. On the other one, again, you take a look, the benefit is the 350 and the 350 and the 100. So we have an $800 benefit for society, but each one is still being taxed $300 per person. So that's a cost of $900, or in other words, that's a negative $100 benefit for society. Now, this would be the other way around. 2 people get it passed, or the majority get it passed, and the minority go, what the heck did you do that for? And society overall loses. This is what happens when you start focusing on certain things, and we don't take a look at the long-term benefits. So that's what that's looking at. Now, the other on 103 gives you that table down at the bottom, and they're going, well, we can't figure out what everybody wants because we all want different things at different times. So they try this thing of, well, maybe we'll link a couple of things together. And that's all they did here. They took national defense and road and weather, and then national defense and weather. Those are the 3 things they looked at. And they try to say, okay, using these 3 things, which one might come out first? And if you notice, all 3 of them came out first. So this system didn't happen at all. Why? Because even when we look at first, second, or third choices, which seems like a good thing, it still doesn't go ahead and give us a good feel of what's going on. This is why we go back and take a look at the other. All right, I got less than a minute. So what I will do is this is going to shut off, and now this one I guess I'm gonna have to send you the code to again. So we're going to kind of go from